This is the concierge, sir.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Concierge Confidential. I'm your host, Brian Ortega, and in today's episode, we're going to be talking about the hotels within hotels. These are the luxury properties that are very rarely seen and sort of how they operate. So I'm talking about places like the Skylofts at MGM Grand, the mansions at MGM Grand, the tower suites at the Wynn, the Sky Suites over at the Aria. The Bellagio also has their suites and villas, and of course the Fleur-de-Lis rooms over at the Fontainebleau. So what I'm going to be talking about today is I'm going to talk about like really what their role is in Las Vegas and why we have them, and also kind of the cool world that goes into and what sets these places apart. Because you're always hearing about 5-star hotels and 5-star service and luxury service, and what does that mean? And that Vegas doesn't have it anymore. That it used to be better when the mob ran Vegas, and you know these luxury hotels don't know how to treat people. Well, the thing is about this town is that if you're willing to pay for it, you can get that luxury service. So we're going to be diving into that coming up next. Okay, everybody, so let's go ahead and dive into the topic today. So essentially what I'm talking about is what it takes for these luxury hotel within hotels to operate and what makes them so unique and what sets them apart, essentially. They're all a little bit different depending on its makeup, where it's located inside the hotel, and really why we have them. So let's just dive into this like beginning part of like why we have these properties. We have these properties because Vegas is a very unique place that it sort of operates as an extra thing to entice gamblers to stay in those hotels. So I think it's very interesting because you would get this type of service like places in New York City, a few select places in Los Angeles, maybe Chicago, but really places like New York, Miami, Florida, Los Angeles, Las Vegas are kind of like the major cities where you would get this type of service. There's obviously many hotels, and this is just in the United States. There's plenty of places around the world that offer this 5-star service, places like London, Paris, Rome, the major sort of huge luxury cities. So why does Vegas, of all these places, really rank in all of that? I would say per capita, we probably have some of the highest end hotels within hotels in the United States. Reason being, it all comes down to money. Money is the most important thing to know when it comes to these luxury properties. These luxury properties are built to be able to house and entice people to want to stay in their properties. And you say, oh, well, it's just like, expensive hotel room. They have like really soft beds. You just want a place to sleep. And the thing is, sure, at the very base level, most normal people just want that, but it's the service that comes with that suite. So, for example, it doesn't take much to have a really nice mattress, a good view, and maybe some private entrance or expedited check-in. Yeah, you can get all that stuff for regular rooms, of course, but what are you getting when you spend top dollar at some of these high-level places? So what you are getting for all the places that I mentioned in the opening, so things like Fleur-de-Lis, Sky Suites, Skylofts, Sky Suites, the tower suites over at the Wynn, and then also like the villas and suite service at the Bellagio, and of course, I did say, and the mansions, of course. So you are getting everything that comes with those hotels. So what does that encompass, basically? So one of the major things that you are going to get usually a different entrance than everybody else. You'll usually have your own entrance to get into your hotel room. Another one that really kind of blew somebody's mind that I was working with was we do what's called in-suite check-ins. So you actually never have to go to a check-in desk. You actually come into the hotel room or come into the hotel, and then you'll go up to your suite, and they check you in the suite that has already been assigned to you. So it's just that level of exclusivity, essentially. I was able to, and every place is different, obviously, but that is one part of it, is that you do get your own designated check-in line, and sometimes you never even have to walk inside of the check-in space for your property. It's designated just for your people. Another really important thing to note is that we do have large large teams that support just these hotels. So we'll have, for example, in places like Fleur de Lis and Skylofts. And the reason I'll use a lot Fleur de Lis and Skylofts as my examples is because I was able to sort of see how Skylofts works, even though I never actually worked there. But I did lots of tours that went up to Skylofts when I used to be a concierge at MGM Grand. And at Fleur de Lis, I've been able to work with the team there. And obviously, I'm not going to tell you guys any names because that's against our policy, obviously. Sorry, guys. But I can tell you somewhat of how it works and what you get when you stay at a property like this. So, for example, at Skylofts, we'll use that as the example, you would come in through your private entrance, go up to the top floor. You do have a designated concierge up there. So they also operate as sort of like their extra check-in, essentially, which is on their, I believe, 29th floor. So when you're up there, they do have butlers that do service every single room. So they are versed in cocktail making, coffee making, obviously. They're also usually able to prepare meals, usually finishing meals or just presenting them so they do look like actual meals you'd have at home, not something you would get like in a to-go tray, essentially. So similar at Fleur de Lis, they do have a very large team of butlers, butler coordinators. You also have all of your managers and directors, and everything is sort of centered on a specific number of floors. So a thing that comes with this, especially like being a hotel within a hotel, is that you have designated floors just for your hotel rooms. So reason being is that it's logistically able for us to be able to coordinate through all these places. We'll use Skylofts as the example. So Skylofts actually is technically 2 floors, but they're all on the 29th floor, essentially. So they take up the 29th and 30th floor of the MGM Grand. That is because they are lofts, so they all are 2 stories. They're single rooms, single bedroom, 2 bedrooms, and then they had a couple 3 bedrooms. I believe they only had 2 3-bedroom suites because they have one on each end, and then they also have the one that has a jacuzzi, which is the one that has is on the Tetris, the tier side. So those suites all had a butler. They usually have a butler apprentice. Of course, they also have their concierge team that assists with their team's needs as well, and anything that comes with that. So what does that mean? So that typically means that you will, when you register to stay in that hotel room, you get a little bit more service than you would get from staying in a regular part of the room. So, for example, for MGM Grand, you would check into like a standard room, essentially, and then you would get your confirmation. It is up to you to be able to reach out to the concierge desk, and then we'll be able to assist you with any questions you might have, tell you how to purchase tickets for you, make dinner reservations, and give you some information on how and all the attractions in the city. With higher end properties, so luxury properties, you might have a concierge team or butler coordinators, as they are at Fleur de Lis. And when you when you actually make the reservation for the suite, you will speak with, or you'll get an email from the butler team or the coordinating team. The butler coordinators or the concierge team saying, welcome, you're coming to Las Vegas. Please fill any of this information out that you'd like us to look into, when you arrive, all those good things. Why do we ask for you when you arrive? So many properties, especially for these luxury resorts inside of resorts. The reason we build these, which I kind of sort of belabored the point here, is that they build these to get gamblers. And this is a way for us to entice gamblers to come in. And how will we do that? So typically a lot of these floors and a lot of these luxury suites are usually like 70%. I'm using Skyloft numbers. So 70% of the people who would stay at the Skylofts were casino invited guests. So typically people who are here to gamble. They're people who are, big spenders. Sometimes you get people who just spend a lot of money in the hotel, but most of the time it's people who spend money in the casino. It's very, very important. And they always look at the numbers. They see how much can I how much can I comp this person, and how much money do they bring to the hotel? How does it outweigh the situation, essentially? So it's a gamble, just like anything in Vegas, but they've done a lot of calculated risks and figured out that it is worth putting people up this way because it makes them keep coming back. The return guest is always the number one thing in any resort, whether it be high end or low end. You want a returning customer because that is money that you know is there. So the reason we build these things is for these guests. Going into like more like what it comes with. So typically, if you are a casino invited guest, not a retail guest, which retail guests typically pay to stay in those suites, I'll use the numbers for Skylofts because I'm not going to tell you guys what Fleur de Lis is. But the Skylofts tend to cost, depending on the week, you can sometimes get a one-bedroom Skyloft for about $800 to $900. Sometimes if it's like really dead and they're not using the room, you might get one for $750. But yeah, usually about $800 to $900 a night. If it's on a weekend that's a little bit more busy, you're looking at $1,200 to $1,300 a night. And then if you go up to a 2-bedroom, you're looking at probably $1,800. And then it's very easy that sometimes it can cost up to $2,000 for a 3-bedroom suite. So it is one of those things that it just depends on the time of the year. And most of the time you have to call to make those reservations because we're not going to post what it is online. But just knowing information for Skylofts, that's what it would be. Skylofts, unlike some other properties, so places like Bellagio, places like the Mirage used to have, and then I believe the Wynn, they have villas. So the difference between like a villa and a suite or a sky suite or a loft, mansion also has villas, is that they are usually set up to have outdoor portions. They're usually set up to be sort of like indoor outdoor. They're usually like on a lower level because they will usually have it's like a personal pool or a patio, and those are usually going to be villas. And villas also have like certain size to it as well. I was able to do tours of the mansion at MGM Grand, and that was a really cool experience because every place is a little bit different and has different character. And I think that's actually what sets apart a lot of the luxury properties inside of hotels, is that they always have like a lot of details. Details are very important. Lots of luxurious, very opulent things sometimes. Sometimes they're sleek and they want to be modern. Like Skyloft's sort of theme was always sleek and modern. Same thing with the Sky Suites over at the Aria. But then you also have places like the Wynn, places like the Bellagio, places like the Mansion, that is really based on sort of very classic feel, very big, opulent. The Mansion, for example, at MGM Grand, felt very timeless. It felt very much like an Italian villa you would see like in Lake Como or Rome, and it was beautiful. And what set it apart was that it was sort of big, giant mansion, essentially. That was the setup. And then it had a courtyard, which actually had live oranges and lemons growing out of it, with a beautiful fountain. And it was actually enclosed, it still is, enclosed with glass, and it lets in natural sunlight, but it's also temperature controlled because nobody wants to step outside when it's 105 degrees, but if it's a beautiful 82 degrees on the inside, you'll be able to go outside, feel like you're outdoors, but still be in a climate-controlled space. It did also have like an outdoor pool for anybody who wanted like a natural pool, sunlight kind of deal. But there were many villas that actually had their own swimming pools where you never actually had to step outside. We were able to go up to the 3rd floor because it's 3 floors. So 1, 2, 3, 4. On the 3rd floor is where they have the biggest villa, which was like 10,000 square feet. It was like 5,000 square feet. It was huge. It had 3 bedrooms, had its own pool, its own gym, and it was on its own private floor. And it was beautiful space. And these come with butlers, obviously. They come with, support staff. And it was really fun because I would say that these luxury properties are all sort of like a giant, beautiful machine, that there is a structure to what they do. It's very much like what they say, a duck floating on water, where you have this beautiful sort of gliding thing on top of the water, but below you have all these you have the fins sort of like going back and forth, making sure everything stays upright. It's all these different spinning plates that have to go all the time, and that's what you're purchasing. You're purchasing for all of this to look flawless and all of this to go off without a hitch. And that's before we even talk about any like celebrations. This is just getting you into the hotel. But one of the really cool things for the mansion, for example, that's a feature that they get to really flaunt, which I think is amazing, is that when you come into the mansion, which is located behind the M&M factory, big giant walls, so you can kind of see the mansion structure, but then they also have like these privacy walls as well. So they have this big giant gate that opens up from this like alleyway, and then you're sort of greeted where this big giant courtyard is, which is beautiful, and you're usually picked up in a Rolls Royce. So they'll open the gate, and I saw this happen. It was so cool. So we were actually doing a tour, and they were having an arrival, so we were able to stand kind of to the side, which was still crazy that we were able to do it. So we're standing there, and the general manager of the mansion sort of comes out, and it very rarely do you have guests actually arrive at the same time. It does happen every so often, but with so fewer guests, it doesn't happen that often. But we would have the gate would open. They would come in this beautiful courtyard, sort of round, sort of like an Italian style. And then as the gates open, the two double doors, which were automatic because they were handicapped, but it looked cool, they would also open. So as the courtyard opens, the doors open to the mansion, and then you're greeted by your butler and the general manager of the mansion. And it's just a beautiful welcome to the property, and it's all in the performance of it. And I think that's one thing that I love to tell people is that hotels are hotels. Like, you're going to stay in a room, but what makes them different are the people that sort of populate that space and also make the experience worth it. They're the sort of the picture that comes with that entire stay. And it's really great. So I'll give you sort of like a little insight into like how Fleur de Lis works. Cause it's funny because people always ask us, like, when I was at the concierge desk, they'll ask, is Duran Duran coming through here? Are these people? No, they're not. They're not. We have many different entrances to come into our hotel, especially when they're performing in the hotels. So we have many different entrances to come in. So a lot of our higher profile guests will come in through different entrances because of privacy. So that's one thing to do. A lot of people sometimes want to walk through the lobby, and usually when it's like our first time having a guest come to the property, we like to take them through the main lobby just so they can kind of see what the inside of the building looks like, and then from then on we'll give them like different entrances, obviously. So that's also for other properties too. Like MGM Grand always had this like secret entrance that you didn't have to walk through the main lobby. Sorry for all of you WWE fans who had to witness, I think, was it CM Punk getting mobbed by fans in the main elevator bank. Man, maybe you should have asked for private security to take him in. But that's part of it. So with that being said, who stays in these properties? So you get a lot of gamblers. So lots of gamblers who are regulars for the hotel. And they're typically repeat guests a lot of the time. And sometimes they're from other properties. I know we had a guest who was actually staying at a different property, but he was going to be playing on our property. So he's in the casino, and he just wanted a place to be able to take a nap. So he actually was just renting one of the rooms, and also was renting the room so they can, charge the room, because then that's how the casino hosts are able to take care of bills. So that was another way for them to do that. So yes, people do that all the time. We get lots of locals. Like, lots of locals will stay in our properties because it comes with the service, obviously. And again, transportation is always another big thing. When you work in concierge, there are a little bit more rules, I would say. So going back earlier to what I said about like we're a well-oiled machine, it's very interesting because it's very much in luxury service. You are a well-oiled machine, but also able to play like like technical jazz at the same time, very loose, because you have to be able to be flexible with your guests. And I think that's also what you get when you stay at a higher end part of the hotel, for example. And again, it's also relationships too. But like if you came up to me at the concierge desk and you asked for like an impossible reservation for somewhere, we'll do our best. We'll sometimes call the hostess stand and do all that other stuff. And that's kind of the best we can do. For luxury properties, they will typically have the general manager of that property's phone number, text messages, and they'll be able to reach out. Sometimes doesn't happen all the time, but usually impossible reservations are a little bit easier to get done, just because you have those relationships built up, and also these are important guests to the hotel, which is actually one of the reasons I do enjoy working in like the luxury part of the hotel sometimes, is because, and this is just a personal thing. This is unfortunately not for everybody, but I do like dealing with guests where there is a direct impact on how we perform for the guest, because it feels like there's more like high stakes, like there's something at stake if like I don't get something done. So I also have to say, like it's a little bit easier in luxury luxury part of the hotel to work with guests, because they obviously have more disposable income for their stay, but also it's a little bit easier to sort of navigate going through a lot of the red tape for certain things, which is quite nice. That's always kind of a nice thing. But yeah, people still have questions on like whether you can charge things, which we'll get to that too. So there is this whole thing of like when you're paying so much money, is everything free? No, it is not. The guests who stay in these rooms still have to pay. They have to pay for, whether it's charging to the room or not, but they do have to pay for things like the spa, like restaurants, obviously. And the thing is that the cool thing about MGM is that MGM owns so many properties, is that it becomes much easier for them to comp things. Because if you're staying, for example, at the Skylofts, and then you want to go see O at the Bellagio, it's much easier to comp because it's all one property. It's all one company, essentially. Places like the Wynn, places like Fontainebleau, you really only have your property. And if you ever want to purchase things at other properties, so for example, if somebody wants to go see Le Rêve at the Wynn, they can pay for it, and will use their credit card, obviously. Or the luxury property will sometimes buy the tickets for you and then charge your room for the price of the tickets. So it's sort of like a way to circumvent sort of that situation. It also depends on like how big the guest is. Is it worth, going through all that for that guest? Because it all comes down to, worth. We'll try to do it for any guests. I've actually done it already where we had to purchase tickets for a guest and then it kind of gets charged back to the room. And it's sort of like a way to do that. Sometimes the casino host will purchase the tickets, and then we'll go, do the whole getting them situation. But yeah, it's a really cool, interesting way of like looking at it, which is why usually people who stay at luxury properties will do things on property, because it's much easier for us to charge to a room and then be able to comp it at the end. So that does happen quite frequently, is they charge the room, they'll look it over, and then it's comped at the end. And then we get all these different things, and we'll use it for different reasons. So like public relations, sales, entertainment. Obviously, marketing is a huge part of it, casino marketing. So it is a very important part of the hotel, because it is a very, it's sort of like that secret part of the hotel, but it's also can be very, very important marketing tool for the property, because it is the best of the best. Also, we do tend to do a lot more elaborate setups for guests when it has to come to like with balloons or amenities or anything that is to really impress the guest, because these are once in a lifetime experiences. And that's really what we're excited to do, is to deliver on those great experiences. They also have a lot more like personalized things in the luxury part of the hotels. So places like Skyloft, places like Fleur de Lis, the Tower Suites, especially when people bring kids. These suites are great for people who have children because they have multiple rooms. It feels very much like a condominium or a condo, sometimes like a house that they're used to. And I think it was really great when I was doing tours of the mansion that the general manager was talking about. Yes, this is very opulent and big and huge, and I know that like this is bigger than a lot of people's houses. Well, the people who come and stay here, this is a fraction of what their actual house probably looks like, and this is what they would expect as their vacation. They want it to be as close as possible to what it is to be like at home. And I thought that was a very eye-opening thing, is that you have to look at it through the lens of a luxury guest, obviously. So these suites and this type of service is definitely like the top tier of Las Vegas. Because there is like, as they say, there are levels to this. Because if you are staying at places like the Bellagio, places like Venetian, places like Fontainebleau, to be honest, all of these hotels, like these hotels, are the luxury properties, and a standard room is way above like what you would get from other properties as well. Cosmopolitan is also a top tier property as well, and I believe they also have butlers as well. But we'll get to butlers in a second, how cool they are. But once you get to like their luxury part of their hotel, it is the cream of the crop. It is people trying to deliver on very high levels because they are very much representing what the reviewers and the public see of our properties, and they are sort of the face of the luxury portion of the hotel. So let's get to the butlers, because the butlers are really what sets a lot of this luxury stuff apart. The butlers are so cool. They're honestly like ninjas, that they're able to do so many different things, and they all have these different specialties. They speak multiple languages, and they're just super cool. And a lot of people spend their whole lives in luxury, learning to be a butler. And it can be very difficult, just because you do have to deal with lots of different personalities. You have to be able to really set like rules, because many people think like anything goes in a lot of these suites, which compared to other parts of the hotel, they kind of do. But you might get like an unruly guest. You might get somebody who thinks they're entitled to something and they aren't. And the butler is supposed to be that first line of defense of like reminding you like what the rules are. And obviously there is like sort of like a system of like how we get back, how we get like management involved if something is needed. But butlers are there to be kind of like the cool, like older brother or sister trying to explain how everything works. So they also are experts in the suites. Like they know everything about what goes into the suite, how the Bluetooth works, how the temperature works, how the TV gets turned on, how the coffee maker works. Lots of things go into knowing what's in one of these suites. And you say, oh, like I could do that. Well, my dad can't. So guess who's going to help him? Probably the butlers that are in these rooms. They also study a lot. They do have to study the people coming into the properties. Sometimes they'll have more information than others, especially if like they're a celebrity or somebody who is a regular. You'll start to learn their orders. I was actually working, a couple days ago, and I got the same call from the same guest, and he basically ordered almost the same thing, and I was able to sort of have like a little bit of banter, knowing like, oh, are you going to have this again, today? And then they said, no, we're going to skip that for today. And I think that is actually, and it kind of like an afterthought at the time, but I think that is what makes like the human experience of luxury so well done, is because I remembered. And I think that is like the high that I get from doing it, is that you're like, oh yeah, like we're cool. Like I remembered what he wanted. Like it's sort of like when a waiter knows your order or your drink, it just makes you feel special. And I think that was a really nice moment that I kind of had. So, but yeah, the butlers are like the coolest people in the world. I think being a butler would be a really cool job, to be honest. I've really gotten into wine lately, so I would love to sort of spread that knowledge because a lot of times they're experts on wine or spirits. They know how to make cocktails, obviously. They'll also run off of property. It just sounds so cool that like we have cars because a lot of them will have cars to be able to go off of property to get things. They will purchase things for you, like In-N-Out Burger, which I've seen that happen before. We've gone off property to get certain spirits because it's really cool. If you actually go to the Total Wine and More, which is next to the airport by Town Square, you'll see like house cars from different properties like MGM or the Bellagio or Wynn going into Total Wine & More to purchase spirits that they've run out of and they needed to buy one for a guest. Like I've seen somebody buy a Louis XVI $10,000 bottle of cognac inside of Total Wine & More. If you go to that Total Wine & More, they will have bottles and crazy spirits that you'll never see ever again in any other Total Wine & More. It's insane. It's actually really, really cool. But it's just what it comes with, man. That's like and that is what you are paying for. You are paying for all of this service. So like what it would take, let's use Fontainebleau as the example. Fontainebleau has about 3,700 hotel rooms. And, you have the concierge desk has about 20 people that work in that department, servicing that many guests. Let's just say easily 2,000 guests, 1,000 guests. When you are working at Fleur de Lis, you have all the butlers, the coordinators, which, is a much smaller team, obviously, but focused on a very few number of floors and a very few number of guests. So it becomes much more personalized experience when you're coming in. And there's actually a gentleman there that works there now that knows everything about repeat customers and how they act and, their kids and all those things that go with experience. So I think with luxury, you really get that personalized human experience that I was talking about last week. That is really what you're paying for. The transportation is cool. Like we have Escalades. We also have Rolls Royces. Every property worth their salt has to have a Rolls Royce. It's very, very important. People will ask for Rolls Royces specifically. I would say when requesting transportation, and this is another cool thing, is that when you're in concierge, people ask for a car. You have to go into the whole thing of like, well, it's going to be about $120 for an Escalade or a limousine, and then we have to see if we have it available. Up at Fleur de Lis, when we have a guest asking for a car, which most of the people who ask for cars are casino-invited guests, they usually get one, and we're able to sort of be flexible on... Actually, instead of 3:30, I want it like now. And then we'd be able to snap our fingers and make it happen. So that's really cool. I think being able to have transportation is nice. Try not to abuse it. We have had guests abuse the transportation privilege because then it becomes just running around and around and around. And it's not always great. But usually you'll get transportation to and from the airport. And people are usually more over the moon for that as well. So... that's really cool. Luxury like working in those places are cool because you feel a little bit of the pressure, which is a little bit stressful, and I've enjoyed it. Like I've enjoyed being able to work in that part of the hotel and get to see guests from that point of view, and we deal with celebrities obviously because they stay in town, and I've been able to work. At least take some calls, and everyone's super nice, which is really, really cool. I like that. That's cool. I didn't really talk about like what the Fleur de Lis suites look like. I didn't say that earlier, but the Fleur de Lis suites are actually quite nice. They have 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom, and they do have a couple penthouse suites which have 4 bedrooms, which is massive. They're really cool. They're like wood floor with all the like motifs from all the bow ties, and then they obviously have all the butlers that come in with them that have really cool uniforms. Uniforms are really cool. Big uniform guy. But yeah, I would say based on reviews from other people, people do say that Fleur-de-Lis rooms are more expensive than other properties, and honestly, working there, I can see why, because you get us, we're awesome, and I do think it does take a certain type of person to work in this environment. Some people are really good organizers. They're really good at sort of putting together, your stay and sort of keeping track of like what you're into. It's a lot of like seeing what you like, because we don't forget. So, for example, for our department, we do keep track, and anybody who works in the luxury sort of sphere, we keep track of specific things that you might order, specific things that you really liked, specific things that you don't like, because you usually do fill out like a form of anything that you're allergic to, anything that you really don't enjoy, anything that can differentiate, and we can make a better experience for you. So, if you're allergic to stuff, we try not to put those in items. We'll double check, all that good stuff. So, which one? Oh, so like we had a guest that really enjoyed something we put in her room. It was like a cookie of some sort, and they really enjoyed it. And we made sure to make a note on the reservation that we'll always have those cookies when that guest is going to check in. So we keep track of those type of things. We keep track of if your kids liked something specifically in the room, a PS5, if they liked like a certain toy, or our butlers will also listen and figure out like, hey, like they're going to dinner at 7. Let me remind them at 6 o'clock that you have a reservation at 7 o'clock tonight, because that's what we're here for. And we'll also make reservations, of course, at other properties too. Being a concierge, like what I do, I get really excited when we have like dinner reservations, or if somebody calls and they want, a dinner recommendation somewhere. I like to spring into action for that kind of stuff. But it's really cool. I think being a concierge, I really like the tight looseness, if that makes any sense, that you get from working like at Fleur-de-Lis, for example, because you are supposed to answer the phone a certain way, but it's really, you do have to ask lots of questions, but I'm learning that there is a way to do that by also, taking an order or taking a request that we're able to book, which is quite nice. So, I find it fascinating, and I might do more on this another time, but hopefully you guys enjoyed it. I think it's a really fun part of the hotel, and it's really exciting, and it feels like this is what Vegas is like for a lot of people. I know it's very expensive, and it's aspirational, of course, but as somebody who gets to work in it, I really do enjoy it. So with that being said, thank you so much, everybody, for listening. Really appreciate it. If you see me out in town, come up and say hello. But remember, keep it confidential.